I knew something was off the second Darren stepped into the room, but I wasn't expecting to be executed in front of my own team over a damn server log. I don't care about your procedures. Clear your desk now, he shouted, his voice bouncing off the glass walls like some reality show meltdown. Everyone froze. I was standing next to the whiteboard, still holding the printout from this morning's audit. The one that already had a green checkmark and 2 signatures. Didn't matter. Darren needed blood, and apparently, I was the sacrifice of the week. I didn't say a word. Not because I was stunned, because I wasn't. I'd seen men like Darren before. MBA glossed, overconfident, and allergic to anything that didn't come with a TED Talk. The kind of guy who thinks leadership is about volume and posture, not memory or competence. So I turned, slow and measured, walked to my desk, and began packing up 13 years of my life. HR hovered behind me like buzzards, one of them pretending to look at her tablet, the other fiddling with his badge reel. No one made eye contact. No one breathed. I placed my backup drive into the box, slid my mug in next to the plant I'd never been able to keep alive, and then quietly reached into my pocket and pulled out the USB key. Encrypted. Labeled in my own shorthand. I slid it into the small port behind the left monitor, one I'd personally modified years ago for security patching. No one else ever used it. Most didn't even know it existed. I waited 4 seconds until the confirmation light blinked blue. Then I pulled it out, dropped it into my coat pocket, and turned to leave. I didn't slam the door. I didn't cry. But my dignity dragged behind me like a cape soaked in gasoline. They'd lit the match, but they didn't know what was about to catch. Before I go on, if you're watching this and you've ever been blindsided by a smug boss or watched someone get canned for something stupid, do me a favor. Hit that like button. And if you're one of the 97% who listens without subscribing, don't be Darren. Subscribing keeps stories like this alive, and trust me, it gets juicier. Anyway, the elevator was empty. Perfect. I needed the silence. As the door slid shut, I let out the breath I'd been holding. My pulse didn't spike, my hands didn't shake. The only thing that burned was the humiliation, and something colder under it. The USB key was still in my hand, warm from the port. A tool meant for emergencies. Only one person in the building knew what it actually did. Me. The protocol I triggered wasn't malicious. I didn't corrupt a thing. Didn't touch a single line of business data. But what I did engage was something I called containment lock. A dormant system buried inside our legacy infrastructure. Our old Chronos scheduling shell that was designed to halt cascading failures in the event of a cyber attack. We'd never needed it. No one even remembered it existed. Except me. And now it was active. Darren, in his ignorance, had just fired the only person who could restart the heartbeat of our entire global logistics platform. And I had no intention of answering his calls when the body flatlined. Let the weekend begin. I spent Friday evening exactly how I wanted. In my garage, sipping lukewarm black coffee from a chipped mug that still had our old company logo on it. Back before they slapped everything with that sleeker branding Darren brought in to reposition us for scale. The same logo I'd helped design a decade ago in a late-night emergency meeting with marketing. Funny how fast they forget. I didn't touch anything I wasn't supposed to. Didn't plant a virus. Didn't sabotage a damn thing. That's not how I operate. But I did watch as the lock sequence completed its second verification phase on my screen. A quiet little status window tucked into the corner of my private backup node. Containment lock, active. That was it. Nothing flashy. No alarms. Just a small, precise shift, like flicking the right breaker in a fuse box before the whole house burns down. Back at HQ, I imagined Darren holding court, chest puffed out like a rooster in a mirror. He'd be pouring his usual management by soundbite crap into anyone still willing to pretend to listen. We're streamlining, he'd say. Cutting outdated practices. Eliminating dead weight. Translation. He finally got to fire someone with seniority, and now he thought that made him a leader. Never mind that the dead weight, he just axed also happened to be the only person keeping the Chronos system from choking on its own outdated dependencies. I'd patched that system together like a mechanic keeping a 94 pickup running with duct tape and intuition. It wasn't pretty, but it was stable. Efficient. and built on over a decade of nuance that no documentation, no consultant, no online forum could replicate. We didn't have off-the-shelf software. We were the shelf. And now, that shelf had a lock welded to its center. I finished my coffee, clicked over to my diagnostics tab, and smiled, not smug, not even satisfied. Just steady. Like a woman who finally walked out of a burning building and heard the first crack of timber behind her. One line blinked amber on the status screen. Not red. Not panicked. Just amber. Failover mode. Queued. Manual override required. That's the thing with containment locks. They don't crash the system. They stall it. They wait. They assume the person responsible will return, verify credentials, and restore control once the crisis passes. But Darren was the crisis, and there'd be no credentials coming his way. By 10 p.m., the first hints started trickling into the lower-tier logs. A sorting node in Phoenix skipped a sequence. A timestamp drifted out of sync in Kansas. In Frankfurt, a route template reset to default coordinates. Minor, ignorable, unless you knew what they meant. Unless you'd seen this kind of slow-motion crumble before. The automated flags started pinging by midnight. Quiet alerts only visible to the right admin-level dashboards. Alerts Darren didn't even know existed, because when I showed him the topology once, he'd interrupted halfway through to check his smartwatch and said, "I trust the engineers will handle it." Right. He trusted me to handle it, until he didn't. I closed the laptop. Didn't touch a single config. Everything that was happening now. It wasn't revenge. It was design. The system wasn't broken. It was waiting. And come Monday, so would everyone else. By Saturday morning, the cracks had started showing. Nothing dramatic, nothing loud. Just hairline fractures beneath the paint. A few delivery windows didn't sync properly, causing a half-dozen trucks to sit idle outside the Toledo warehouse with no green light to unload. The routing logic pushed 3 separate shipments to the same loading bay in Dallas, creating a bottleneck that nobody could explain. Darren, of course, shrugged it all off. "Probably just lag," he said over Slack. "IT's got it." I told them to reboot the sync node and clear the queue. His go-to solution for every complex issue was to turn it off and back on again. Real genius, that one. Meanwhile, ops managers were quietly texting each other under the radar. "Anyone know why Kronos isn't triggering fallback? My auto sequence just froze mid-cycle. Manual override doesn't do anything. It's grayed out." I was in my garage again, not because I had anything to fix, but because it felt like the right place to be. That concrete floor, the smell of old oil, the pegboard full of labeled tools, it grounded me. This was where I used to solve real problems. Mechanical ones. Things that clanked and hissed. Not fragile software stacks built on wishful thinking and quarterly projections. My laptop sat open on the bench. Diagnostics were clean. The lock was holding steady. Kronos was still operational, technically. Just restricted. Anything outside the core parameters had been quietly sandboxed, waiting for a master reauthorization. No one could break it because it wasn't broken. It was simply behaving exactly as designed. I took a slow sip of coffee and checked my email, expecting nothing. But one message stood out. Forwarded from a friend still on the inside. Subject line: "You didn't hear this from me." Attached was a screenshot of an email Darren had just received, flagged red by the system. Sent by a mid-tier supervisor in logistics, a woman I'd worked with dozens of times over the years. Sharp and unflappable. Subject: urgent, system Kronos, locked in containment state. Body: Idaren. I don't want to escalate unnecessarily, but multiple regional leads are reporting serious sync failures, and the automated fallback sequences aren't triggering. I've confirmed that Kronos is running in what appears to be a containment mode. Restricted permissions, no manual override access. I've never seen this state before, and it's not documented in our admin guides. Please advise ASAP. Layla M. I almost laughed. Please advise ASAP. As if Darren had a single clue what to advise. He was probably still Googling containment mode Kronos while shouting at someone from procurement to get the engineers on it. Problem was, there were no engineers left who'd touched Kronos in the last 5 years. I was it. I was the archive, the dictionary, the ghost in the machine. And now, that ghost had gone silent. They'd spent so many years shaving down support staff, outsourcing deep tech, favoring consultants who billed by the hour instead of engineers who lived in the code. I warned them, over and over again, that centralizing Kronos without redundancy was risky, that a single point of failure in logistics was a time bomb. Darren had laughed it off. Legacy paranoia, he called it. Paranoia doesn't blink amber on a Saturday morning. And I was still in my garage, jazz playing low from a dusty speaker, the same mug of coffee, now mostly cold, watching a silent, intricate system do exactly what it was told. Wait. By dusk, more pings showed up in the logs. Los Angeles flagged a sorter crash. A shipment from Memphis rerouted itself in a loop, bouncing between two warehouses like a confused Roomba. Nothing fatal. Not yet. But the system wasn't patching around the issues. No heuristics. No learning. Kronos had entered obedience mode. Contained. Suspended. Respectful of its own protocols. If only Darren had done the same. Sunday morning started with a fire drill that didn't come with alarms, just silence, followed by a wave of panicked emails. 2 international shipments had vanished from the schedule, like someone had yanked them out of the ether. One was pharmaceutical-grade refrigeration units bound for Sao Paulo, timed to land within an 18-hour customs clearance window. The other? High-value electronics heading to a Tokyo partner with 0 patience for technical issues. Both were late. Both irreplaceable. Combined value? Roughly $670,000. Gone in a blink. Darren didn't scream. Not at first. He emailed. The kind of email that reeks of sweat through HTML. Urgent. Legal procurement ops. Need immediate visibility on Kronos fallback and reroute systems. Something's not right. Can we manually force recovery or overwrite routing logic? Who owns this process? No one replied for 43 minutes. That's the kind of silence that shatters a man like Darren. The kind that reminds you you're not as important as you thought. Procurement bounced it to Ops. Ops replied with looping in IT, and legal flagged a clause in the Tokyo contract with the phrase material disruption. Darren's inbox bloomed into a carousel of technical jargon and finger-pointing. Everyone asked the same question without daring to say it aloud. Who knows how to fix this? The answer was no one. Because this wasn't a bug, it was a decision. A safeguard. A protocol designed not to fail, but to resist panic. Darren just didn't know that yet. By noon, the first round of external consultants had logged in remotely. Billing at $300 an hour, they roamed the architecture like tourists reading a map in a language they didn't speak. Kronos didn't play well with strangers. The system wasn't documented in any off-the-shelf manual. It was held together by scripts, overrides, and fail-safe side written over a decade in response to real-world messes no vendor ever prepared for. One consultant tried deploying a rollback patch. The system denied the request, citing insufficient trust certs. Another attempted a force reboot. Kronos didn't even flinch. It just flagged the attempt as external injection attempt blocked per admin lock. Someone even poked around the legacy script library and found the old heartbeat chain file I'd commented 6 years ago. Don't touch unless you like downtime. They didn't touch it. Darren, pacing now, red in the face, finally did the one thing no smart tech lead ever does. He tried reading the code himself. I pictured him hunched over a terminal, tie loose, eyes flicking across lines of logic he couldn't interpret. Eventually he found it. A single line buried inside the heartbeat controller. Lock_if_forced_exit equals true. That was it. The ghost key. The logic trigger that Kronos obeyed without argument. The line that told the system, if this person is removed from the system against protocol, initiate containment and require master override. Darren didn't understand what it meant. Not really. He screenshot it and sent it to the consultants, who replied with vague, "We'll investigate," messages while privately Googling every term. One of them even tried to ask, "Does anyone know who wrote this?" The email chain went dead after that. I wasn't watching any of it unfold in real time. I was at a diner 3 towns over, eating a stack of pancakes while a couple in the next booth argued over baby names. My laptop sat in the passenger seat of my truck, closed. Unbothered. I hadn't logged into anything that day. Didn't need to. Kronos was simply following orders. Back in Darren's war room, legal was now asking for logs. Procurement wanted updates for impacted vendors. Ops was threatening to escalate. Darren's voice, once loud and polished, had shrunk to fragments. Get me anyone who worked on Kronos, he snapped into the phone. Find her. What's her name again? Too late, Slick. He could dig through every backup, every user guide, every internal wiki. But unless he found the source, the one who built the rules and wrote the language, he was shouting at a locked door in a house he'd already burned down. And I was finishing my coffee, leaving a generous tip, and letting the silence do what it does best. Echo. Monday didn't arrive so much as it descended, like smoke creeping in under a locked door. By 6:13 a.m., Kronos had fully transitioned from stalling to strangling. Routing trees refused to populate. Inventory dashboards blinked null values. 2 different warehouse networks, one in Denver, the other in Rotterdam, froze mid-cycle and refused to reinitialize. Forklifts sat parked with jobs queued, their onboard tablets displaying the same frozen message. Awaiting sync directive. Dispatchers started calling in confused, then pissed, then scared. By 7:40, every major carrier integration had failed to handshake with the routing core. Tracking IDs stopped updating. Estimated delivery times vanished. Customers started calling, then yelling, then threatening. The Tokyo partner issued a formal escalation. The Sao Paulo buyer went straight to legal. An executive from a Seattle-based electronics firm, one of our longest-standing clients, flat out stated that we were now in breach of contract and liable for damages. The company's communications channel turned into a triage tent. No one knew what to say, only what not to say. Procurement blamed APIs. Ops blamed contractors. IT blamed legacy confusion. All Darren could do was spin in his chair, barking contradictions. Get the logs. Roll it back. Is this a cloud issue? Someone reboot the containers. The final straw was when the board liaison emailed. Is there a name attached to this containment logic? The system metadata refers to a primary architect field. It's empty. That's when Darren called in the nuclear option. He'd resisted until now. Cost was too high, pride too fragile. But with the walls caving in, he authorized a no-limit emergency engagement with Petros and Lang, a Fortune 100 tech consulting firm that specialized in crisis infrastructure. They were the kind of people who billed $10,000 just to look at your system, and another $50,000 to write up why it was broken. By 10:15 a.m., their guy arrived. Trim suit, quiet voice, gray hair like steel wool and a laptop that looked more secure than most bank vaults. He didn't shake hands, didn't do pleasantries. Walked right past Darren, straight into the war room, and opened Kronos like a surgeon laying eyes on a battlefield wound. For 5 minutes, he said nothing. Just read, clicked, typed, scanned. Then he closed his laptop. Darren, pacing like a caged animal, nearly shouted, "Well, fix it." The consultant turned, adjusted his cuffs and said, "It's a phantom protocol." What the hell does that mean? It means someone built a lockout system, one I've seen before in highly sensitive infrastructure. It doesn't destroy anything. It doesn't corrupt. It just waits for a signal, a person, physical reauthentication, biometrics. The consultant shook his head. Worse, physical presence, a reinitiation handshake by the original architect. Whoever built this created a system that trusts no one else. Darren stared at him, blinking. There's no override? The man shrugged. Sure, you can rebuild Kronos from scratch. Give it 3 to 6 months and 20 engineers. Or you get the person who designed it. There it was. The truth, clean and surgical. The room went quiet. For the first time in Darren's tenure, he wasn't the loudest voice in the room, or even a voice at all. He just stood there, cold dread rising like tidewater in his gut, as the blinking cursor on the terminal next to him continued to flash. Status. Containment lock, awaiting master override. His hands shook. Not violently, not yet. But enough. enough to tell him this wasn't a bug. This was intention. He'd walked into a fortress, ripped out the keystone, and expected the roof to stay up out of respect. Now the roof was gone. And so was I. The nerve center was packed with bodies pretending not to panic. You could smell the sweat behind the deodorant, under the cheap office cologne. Everyone stared at terminals, clicking things they didn't understand, whispering theories no one believed. Someone had brought in cold bagels untouched. Phones buzzed with new alerts every 30 seconds. Kronos was flashing red across every pane of glass in the room, like a heartbeat in cardiac arrest. Darren sat at the head of it all, hunched forward, jaw clenched, pupils 2 pinpricks of fury and confusion. His blazer had come off hours ago. His tie, crumpled in a corner. Sleeves rolled up like he was about to fix a sink, not unravel a system he'd never bothered to learn. Then the consultant returned. He'd spent the last hour isolated in a side room with a secure uplink, diving deep into the source fabric of Kronos. No assistance. No status updates. No noise. He walked in now with a laptop tucked under his arm like a coffin lid. He didn't sit. He didn't look around. He stopped in front of Darren, opened the laptop one last time, and rotated it so the terminal faced him. Kronos blinked. Containment lock enabled. Override. Physical initiation required. Last valid auth. Redacted. Attempted by. Unauthorized. Then the consultant closed it. Slowly. Like the final page of a novel no one wanted to finish. You had a fail-safe protocol, he said. Voicecom. Almost pitying. Custom-coded. Proprietary. No backdoor. No shadow access. No universal override. Darren looked like a dog hearing thunder. So fix it. The consultant blinked. You fired the only person who can. For a full 10 seconds, no one moved. Not a breath. Not a cough. Just Darren's eyes darting left, right, like maybe someone would step forward and say, just kidding, we've got a patch. No one did. I'm paying you to solve this, Darren muttered, fists clenched. No, the consultant replied, voice almost gentle now. You're paying me to tell you why you can't. Darren opened his mouth, closed it. Opened it again. Nothing came out. Whatever mask he'd been wearing, the smirk, the swagger, the MBA-flavored confidence, cracked right down the center. His jaw twitched. His breathing turned shallow. He looked suddenly small. Not because the room was big, but because he had no script for this kind of failure. This is insane, he snapped half to himself. Why would anyone build something with no way back in? The consultant turned, already walking away. Because someone knew you'd treat the system the same way you treated the people who built it. The door clicked shut behind him. Darren stood alone. Surrounded by monitors he couldn't read. Alerts he couldn't fix. And the echo of a verdict that landed like a sentence. You broke the only thing you didn't understand. Kronos didn't need revenge. It just needed silence. And now, it had both. Darren stared at his phone like it had grown teeth. The screen was a wall of notifications, texts, voicemails, flagged emails, missed calls stacked on top of missed calls. 94. And counting. Each one another hammer to the side of his temple. CEO, call me now. Board member, Green. Are we facing litigation? Client, YKT Logistics. Your system error cost us $4.2 million. Immediate explanation required. Legal, urgent. Petro's consultant just submitted logs. This is worse than we thought. He scrolled with a shaking thumb, jaw flexing. His phone buzzed again mid-scroll. Call number 95. He didn't answer. Around him, the war room had turned into a hospice ward. Nobody shouted anymore. Nobody even pretended. The energy had shifted, from urgent to helpless. Legal was huddled in a corner, parsing through breach clauses. Ops had gone silent, white-knuckling their keyboards. A junior compliance officer sat frozen in front of her screen, headset still on, not responding to the angry voice piping through. The senior ops manager, Jerry, old school, nearing retirement, broke the silence with a low voice like gravel under tires. She always said one day this place would learn the cost of skipping procedures. That in spoon. What the hell does that mean? Jerry didn't even blink, just looked him straight in the eye. Means we stopped listening to the people who actually knew how this place runs. You wanted agility, Darren? You got it. Now try catching a ghost on a sprint. Another ping. This one from legal. Subject. Forward. System lock forensic logs. Attachment. Chronos_termination_timestamp.pdf. Note. Petro's consultant confirms system lock initiated 7 minutes after employee ID 004812 was forcibly deactivated. Chronos identifies action as unauthorized termination, triggering lock_if_forced_exit protocol. This was not malicious sabotage. It's embedded protocol. Pre-approved. Logged. Time-stamped. Legally clean. Legally clean. He read that phrase over and over. Legally clean. This wasn't sabotage. It was architecture. Protected, documented, written to protect the company from exactly this kind of executive hubris. And Darren had pulled the trigger without ever checking what the gun was pointed at. His forehead broke out in a cold sweat. He could hear someone typing furiously behind him, probably legal drafting the first of many response briefs. Someone else whispered into a phone, "We may need to disclose to partners before it leaks." Disclose. Leak. Damage control. He yanked open his inbox, desperate now, clicking through archived emails, trying to remember something. A backup, a workaround, a contact, a number she might have used. Nothing. Just that same faint memory of a warning he brushed off months ago. Something she'd said after one of their first meetings. Chronos isn't just a system. It's a spine. And if you snap the wrong vertebra, the whole body seizes. He'd laughed. Now his hands wouldn't stop shaking. More calls rolled in. "Oh, Darren. This is unacceptable. Fix it. Now." He gripped the edge of the desk. Eyes locked on the terminal, flashing over and over like a metronome, counting down to the death of his career. Containment lock engaged. System status, critical hold. Override. Master initiation required. Attempted access, denied. The room wasn't spinning. It was collapsing. And all Darren could do was tremble in the eye of the storm he built with his own mouth. The first call came in at 10:12 a.m. Unknown number, but I knew the area code. I let it ring. No voicemail. Then 10:14. Same number. This time a voicemail. I still didn't listen. At 10:19, he tried again. New number. Burner? Office desk? Who knows? Still no answer. I was on the back porch, barefoot, sipping tea this time, because I'd already had too much coffee and I wasn't trying to give myself a stroke. Leaves rustled above me like the world had no idea a logistics empire was choking to death on its own arrogance. The neighborhood kids were riding bikes down the hill, like they were racing gravity. I let the sun hit my face and let Darren sweat through every second of my silence. By noon my inbox pinged. From board admin, executive session. Subject, urgent, emergency board meeting summary. Darren had been summoned. Not invited, summoned. They'd pinned him down, slid him into the chair usually reserved for the guy whose days are numbered, and hit him with one unified demand. Fix this now or step aside. He must have cracked under the weight of it, because 2 minutes later, my phone lit up again, same number. Then came the voicemail. I didn't rush to play it. I waited until the kettle whistled, poured another cup, then tapped play with the kind of lazy calm that only comes when every ounce of power is already in your hands. His voice was a whisper away from breaking. "Hey, listen. I may have overreacted. Things escalated, and I realize now that, look, this isn't personal. We just need to stabilize operations. And I know you're probably the only one who can. Look, if we could talk, maybe we can come to something reasonable. Name your rate." Name your rate. I played it once. Smiled faintly. Not because it was gratifying, though sure it was, but because it confirmed everything I'd ever suspected about men like Darren. He thought leadership meant volume. That titles equaled truth. That systems would obey him the way people did when they feared losing their paycheck. He didn't understand that real systems only follow one thing: integrity. You build that into them, line by line, or they rot. And Darren? He cut corners with people, and then wondered why the corners cut back. I opened my laptop, drafted one short message. To legal department at myoldcompany.com. Subject, Darren's voicemail. Attachment. Voicemail_transcript.mp3. Body. Nice try. But Clause 7C was clear. You terminated access rights without cause. Per our original agreement. That nullifies any contractual obligation on my end. Best. Redacted. I hit send. Then leaned back in my chair, closed my eyes and breathed. Not a dramatic breath. Not a movie ending kind of breath. Just a clean one. The kind you take when the storm's still swirling somewhere far away, but not close enough to touch you. They'd made their offer. I'd sent my answer. And now they could wait. The door creaked open like it didn't want to be part of the moment, and the consultant stepped back into Darren's office with that same calm that made people either trust him or hate him. Probably both. His laptop was under one arm, untouched since yesterday. His other hand held a fresh coffee, steam curling like a question mark Darren couldn't answer. No progress? The consultant asked, neutral as a thermostat. Darren didn't even look up. He was slouched in the chair like someone had unplugged him hours ago, shirt wrinkled, tie discarded somewhere along the journey from panic to paralysis. His face had turned the shade of paper soaked in sweat. What passed for sleep had been a series of 30-second spirals interrupted by more buzzing, more ringing, more voices demanding a miracle he didn't have. He just raised a trembling hand and pointed at his phone. 94 missed calls. That was the count at that moment. The number changed every minute, sometimes every few seconds. Board members. Legal. The CEO. Regional partners. International clients. Some calls came in with no caller ID. Those were the ones that scared him most. The ones from contacts too powerful to leave voicemails. Just silence and wrath. The consultant stepped closer to the terminal, took one last glance. Same screen. Same message. Containment lock engaged. Chronos awaiting master override. Last valid auth. Redacted. Trust cert. Expired. Attempts remaining 0. The blinking cursor flashed red, patient as ever. Waiting. Not for approval. Not for permission. Just for the one person it trusted to tell it the world was safe again. Darren's voice was a croak. There has to be a workaround. There is, the consultant said, sipping his coffee. But she's not answering. Outside the building, 3 blocks away and a universe apart, I walked beneath a perfect blue sky. Crisp air, late morning sun, shoes hitting the pavement with unbothered rhythm. My phone was in my pocket, set to silent. Notifications disabled. Headphones in. Coltrane in my ears. No texts. No tensión. Just clean horns and measured steps. I passed a bakery where I used to grab muffins before the early shift. The owner still nodded at me like I'd never left. I waved back, easy smile. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I knew the servers were still blinking, waiting for my key. I could almost feel the tension on the other end of the line, Darren leaning closer to that terminal with every flash of red, hoping maybe it would suddenly change its mind, that maybe systems could be reasoned with or pressured, or threatened like employees in a boardroom. But systems don't care about pressure. They don't care about confidence or titles or LinkedIn buzzwords. Funny thing about systems, they don't care about titles. Just access.